Hi, everyone, and welcome to Media Capital, a podcast where consumer investing meets media innovation. Today, we're thrilled to welcome James Cummings, Vice President, Business Development at London and Partners. The organization has a mission to create economic growth that is resilient, sustainable, and inclusive, and to tell London's story brilliantly to an international audience in partnership with organizations and people who have a stake in London's promotion. James is based in LA and works with US companies that are expanding into and growing operations in London, as well as London companies exploring the opportunity in the US. In this episode, we talk about how UK and US companies expand across borders, especially in the media and innovation space. He shares insights on market entry challenges, London and Partners' global strategy, and upcoming initiatives like LA Tech Week to support international growth. Hi, James. It's great to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Diana. Wonderful to be here. Thanks to you. Thanks to Media for Growth.
Absolutely. And where are you joining us from today? Where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles, so warm and sunny LA, and thrilled to be here. I hope you're all well in New York.
Yeah, warm, but not scorching hot, which is a great temperature to enjoy. James, I'm always keen and interested to hear your story. How did you find yourself at the intersection of cross-border trade, venture, innovation in media?
And it's funny, isn't it? Because it's a bit of an unusual role in a way. How do you sell cities like London and LA? But I was born and brought up in London, and I loved the city. And Diana, we've actually got something in common, I think, because we both studied at UCL. So I'm keen to hear if my experience of UCL and London resonates with you. I love my time at UCL. It is a center of innovation, and it's been ranked in the top 10 universities in the world, third in Europe after Oxford and Cambridge. But I would say that UCL is a brilliant example of the way London looks internationally and it really thinks about innovation. And I loved London so much, being born and brought up there, that I went to UCL and then did a master's degree in London studies, which I guess isn't the kind of thing you do if you've got a dream of living in Los Angeles. But I didn't know I'd be in LA at the time. But I was very lucky to meet my wife at the University of London doing my master's, who's from LA. And whilst she loved living in London, we now find ourselves in LA, which I think is a city that mirrors London in the diversity of its people and industries, and a place where, creativity, media thrives, and two cities where entrepreneurs and investors take risk, even if they aren't cities that mirror each other in the sunny weather most of the time, or public transport. I found myself living and working in LA, initially at the British consulate here in LA, working with companies in the creative media technology industries that were coming to London, Snap at the time, but now with London and Partners, which is London's growth agency. And we can talk a bit about that maybe. But that's how I find myself in LA, with this weird position as having a master's degree in London studies, but now maybe with the one job in LA, working for London, that kind of somewhat might make some sense.
I think it makes sense. I think no career is linear, is it? And UCL, I had a fantastic experience there. But I think you were in the Bloomsbury campus.
Yeah, and I love just being there and seeing how that part of London has changed. The British Library, the Knowledge Quarter, the Innovation District. London does always change. Every time I go back to London, it changes. These cities do change, they evolve. And that's because of the creativity and diversity and all these ideas coming together. It changes the city, which I think is healthy. It means it's constantly growing.
Absolutely. I'm in New York right now, as you mentioned, raising the fund and growing MFG, but I terribly miss London. It's my favorite place to be. I think it's a fantastic city. I spent 10 years of my life there, and UCO, it was a fantastic experience. Unfortunately, I wasn't that much based in Bloomsbury. That's why I was asking. So we were placed in a very unusual, I think, setup for a student in One Canada Square on the 39th level. So we were surrounded by financial institutions and huge corporates. And that was because of the management and the technology entrepreneurship studies that I did. But yeah, fantastic opportunity as well. And the people that I met there are still very much around me, and we very much keep in touch. So I love that about London. I think it's a fantastic place to study and to live. And I'm curious because one thing that I hear is linear is that you've always been involved in cross-border trades, even before London and Partners, essentially. Was there a defining moment that shaped how you help international brands go into markets? We don't want to talk anything political. I think we want to focus on good news and great news, but obviously post-Brexit, post-pandemic, the tariff pressure that a lot of brands are going through today. Has there been perhaps a defining moment like that for you?
I'm not sure if there's one defining moment, but I do think that there are moments that have happened throughout my life or career that have impacted how I feel about cities and cross-border trade and the highlighting the importance of place. What are those magical ingredients that come together to make cities the places they are and why people want to come together in these places to build? So I'm not sure if there's one defining experience, but a couple of things I remember. I worked for the City of London before I moved over to LA. So helping kind of Chinese banks move into the city and American fintechs move close to where you were in Canary Wharf, where you were studying at UCL. But I remember working with a big Chinese bank and working with the president and some of their execs and just being able to host a meeting in the remains of the Roman amphitheatre in London, which is underneath the Guildhall. London is a city where global companies come and the future is bright and we're constantly innovating, but also pointing to the fact that, look, here we are in the remains of the Roman amphitheatre. London is a city that's been here for 2,000 years. It's going to be here for another 2,000 years. So I think there have been lots of experiences that I feel very lucky to have had, whether it's with a Chinese bank and showing them the history and future of London, or walking around London with a studio from LA or a VR company or a media company, and just seeing how even some of the most creative founders in the US can continue to be inspired really by the ideas that come out of London. And of course, that's the entrepreneurs and the innovation, but also the food, the culture, the history, the future. And equally being over here in Los Angeles and seeing London companies and founders that are coming out here to build globally and talking to them about the future of the city and how the city is going to change and the Olympics and the World Cup coming to LA, the Paralympics, and just seeing these London companies see the size of the city of LA, but the size of the opportunity and the scale of it and the fact that it's home of creativity. I've taken advantage of your generosity, Diana, because I've given 3 or 4 examples rather than one example of something that's inspired me. But I think so often we talked about how cities change and seeing that through the lens of other founders and creators and innovators, that to me has always felt very special and makes it all worthwhile, I think.
I think it's fantastic to have this front row seat, if you like, at looking at how cities evolve. I think it's so much easier to see how organizations evolve, people evolve. I think cities require such incredible infrastructure. And I think London has always been perceived as the financial center of the world. And there's so much out there: culture, arts, R&D, biosciences, the gold triangle, right, between London and Oxford and Cambridge. There's so much innovation coming out of there, which I think, because they're changing still and there's so much innovation and there's a lot of investment flowing in and out of these major economies, London, UK, and US as well. Tell us a bit about what does London Partners do? What does the organization do? What are your kind of top priorities? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so London and Partners, with a growth agency for London. We have this purpose, this remit to create growth that is inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. So that really does drive lots of our work. And we promote London around the world. We have all kinds of different programs to support London companies, support global companies coming into London. The work that I'm really focused on and our international teams, and we have teams in India and China and Europe and 4 small teams across North America. But it's really to, identify and find the most interesting creative companies for me here in LA in the South and Southwestern US, and really help them understand the opportunity in London and why they should build in London. So that's one thing that we do, really help US companies or companies from around the world exploring the opportunity in London. And lots of the companies utilize London as a launch pad to the rest of Europe and the rest of the world as well, because of all that connectivity in London. But also we support London-based companies that are exploring global growth as well. So we often identify London's most exciting scaling companies and help them understand the opportunity, whether that's in New York or Los Angeles. And I know you're meeting a group of our retail tech companies from London that are going to be in New York, and you're kindly hosting them and moderating a panel, I think, tomorrow, which is brilliant. So how can we identify London's most exciting companies, bring them out to the world, showcase them the opportunity, and really help them understand how to build globally as well? So we're funded partly by the Greater London Authority, the Mayor of London's office, to deliver this work. And since we were founded just before the London Olympics and Paralympics in 2012, we've added £4.1 billion to London's economy, created or supported 99,000 jobs. That's really brilliant as well, because we have had an impact on Londoners. The jobs we've created for London, the innovation we've brought to London, and also helped to bring this London leadership and in entrepreneurialism and growth to the rest of the world as well. And I think it's working in collaboration with cities like Los Angeles and New York, because we're all looking to build and how can we bring London's most exciting companies to the world whilst also welcoming them into London as well. Because London is a place that has always welcomed the world, right? We were founded by Romans. We've always been a city that has welcomed the world. We're a diverse city in people, in industry, and I think we love to celebrate that. And that's why we're bringing that inclusive, resilient, and sustainable growth to London and also hopefully to the communities that we're based in around the world.
I've met actually different fantastic individuals from London partners across the years, whether they were from Berlin or Vienna. I had different projects involving different countries. And we actually hosted your colleague Stephen at our event in New York just earlier this year. And that number that you mentioned also stuck with me, but also the fact that I think the missions that we have are quite mutual and supporting international founders coming to the US. Obviously, you also have the cross border bilateral, if you like, trade to the UK as well. And we have a lot of companies that are coming to the US from different countries in which we are investing. We are seeing a lot of challenges, of course, with companies expanding to the US, whether it's LA or East Coast. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing when companies are thinking about expanding to the US, and how do you help solve those challenges?
And I love the work that Media for Growth are doing, because you really are helping build global communities. And LA and London, we're a long way from each other geographically, but we are building bridges. And we have to do that in partnership and alongside leaders like you who support that mission so effectively. But speaking about London companies as they explore the US, especially, but I imagine this is true for other markets as well, or for US companies coming into London. I think getting the right connections in a new city, a new market can be challenging, but is really critical. And I think we can really support that. Companies can join. As I said, we have this program called London based scale ups, and we often bring delegations or trade missions from London over to new markets. So you can join our trade missions. There's an appetite from studios, from corporates in LA to meet innovative companies, to understand how they can partner with earlier stage scale ups, startups, to think about what's the next stage in how consumers will engage with media, will engage with film, TV, gaming. So we can bring companies that can help corporates in LA really help them deliver on that. And I can talk a bit more about the trade missions, but I think that's the one thing, getting the right connections. Secondly, when we look at the US, it's a big place, right? We're 3 hours time difference away. How long is the flight between LA and New York? It's a few hours. So we have 4 different locations in North America. How can we help you locally over here access the different markets and help you understand, well, the cultural differences? We speak the same language, but we don't in a way. So what are the cultural differences? How do you make sure that if someone comes to Los Angeles or Southern California, they don't do one meeting in Santa Monica, then another in Pasadena, then another in Irvine, then another in San Diego before coming up to LA? But we have local guides on the ground, experts to help you understand. So I think getting the right connections, getting that local knowledge is so critical. And then just the scale of the opportunity, especially here in the US, is so massive. The funding rounds are bigger, the audiences are bigger. I just think it's such a massive opportunity. You need to be here, you need to come back here, you need to engage with community here. And I think that's really critical. And I know Media for Growth do lots of that work, having that local knowledge, having people on the ground on both coasts. I think that's really critical. And I think we can support with that as well. So I think there are lots of challenges, and it depends on the industry. It depends on where you are and your company's growth. But those are 3 areas where I think there are challenges, but also lots of opportunity and lots of areas where companies like yours and ours can help them really.
Absolutely. I think it's also about perception and managing expectations. Learn that the hard way, that US is a country, but then in the same way, I'm looking at it almost like 3 different countries in one, right? You've got East Coast, West Coast, and the middle, very different. And we very often see companies coming to the US and trying to go nationwide. And from a media perspective, you very well alluded to that. It's very challenging. It's such a diverse audience. The scale of it, it's formidable. And I think especially when you are a small company, because I'm quite curious and I would love to know more about the trade missions that are coming up, as well as the kind of companies you're supporting. Because if it's a growth stage company, You got to be obviously quite careful about how you're going to scale, how you're going to build that visibility. Founders are fundraising all the time, even probably when they're saying they're not fundraising. Everybody's in fundraising mode. I think we also have to be quite careful, and we normally tend to approach this almost market by market and building that visibility. And I would love to know, because obviously you look after the creative space at London and Partners. What's the delegation that is coming up in LA, which I think is happening during the LA Tech Week? And what kind of companies do you normally support as part of these delegations?
I know what you mean about the US being three regions. And I even think California is the fourth biggest economy on earth. LA is something like the 18th or 19th biggest economy on earth. So even in these regions, what are the differences between working in Northern California and the Bay Area and LA? I think we work really well together and are complementary. But what are those differences? And even understanding that is really critical. We do work across industries. Obviously, creative industries is so important because it's such an important industry for both London and Los Angeles and New York and other places. So we work with loads of US companies that are coming into London from LA, from Austin, from Denver, from Salt Lake City, from everywhere. But to answer your question, I mean, for the London companies coming out here, we are doing something at LA Tech Week. We did a session at Snap's HQ in Santa Monica last year. Snap is a company we helped come to London many years ago. We had an all-women panel. We had BAM Ventures, Universal Music, One Clan, which is a London company, really talking about a subject pretty similar to this. What is it about global cities that make them such hubs of innovation and creative energy? We had RSM as well. We also, for many years, have brought a group of London-based scale-ups in the creative technology space to the gaming companies. Met the Riot Games investors here, companies like Mattel and Google, the LA Rams, LAFC. There are so many companies here that are looking at consumer trends. How do you engage creatively with consumers in new and innovative ways? And we found that LA corporates, like the studios or across creative industries, they're so keen to hear from companies that do offer something new, that have an earlier stage technology that's really could transform the industry. So we've brought lots of these London companies to meet the studios and other groups in LA, and they've won business. They've set up operations in LA or somewhere in the US, thinking of companies like Nexus Studios, which is an incredible studio, do lots of animation work, but really at the forefront of bringing new technology and creative media to the forefront of their projects. Move AI, which is a motion capture company. Moses, which is the forefront of virtual production technologies. They've built out a studio in LA. And those are some of the smaller, earlier stage startups. I think we're seeing loads of success from London companies exploring, how do you build in the US? How do you get in front of those big companies who are going to be your partners? How do you open doors? I do think there's strength in numbers. When we bring over a group of innovative companies, I think CTOs, partnership folks, innovation teams, they love meeting those people. They love hearing pitches. They love understanding what's next. And I think I'm very lucky to work between some of the most brilliant cities in the US and bring these London companies over to meet with them, because they have lots to offer on both
Yeah.
sides.
As you were describing some of the creative production studios, it just reminded me, I think we have a lot more synergies in common than I thought. Particle 6, actually, which is our AI creative studio partner, they are creating all the creative ads for our brands in which we invest. They also have an office in LA, but it's a London-based, London headquartered company, which got many awards, and they are doing some fantastic work using the Power AI pre, during, and post production. If you haven't met them yet, I think it's worth an introduction for sure. And then you mentioned gaming or about some other categories. And one of the first projects, I was very young, it was to translate the Hot Wheels cars that probably all grew up with. And obviously, it's a Mattel brand into video games and mobile games. So we were taking those cars and creating kart racing mobile games. So that was a lot of fun. And it was a huge project that was rolled out into retail on shelves in LA and all across California. Very interesting. You brought back some memories. I think there's a lot of opportunities between these economies. And I'm also curious to know, outside of the creative space, you see a lot of brands across different sectors. Is the perception or is the interest more about relocating on the East Coast or the West Coast? What sort of feedback do you normally get? Because a lot of companies coming to us, perhaps because they're a consumer, they look at New York as the first place to launch in the US.
Yeah, I love that. And congratulations on everything you did with Mattel. That sounds amazing. I remember when we brought our London companies to Mattel's HQ in El Segundo, just by LA Airport. And they've got all these wonderful things. They've got like life-size Hot Wheels cars, and you can step inside a Barbie box. So seeing them just enjoy all that is amazing. It's a fascinating question because I think the perception of how to explore the US market has changed over the years. Of course, New York, San Francisco, they're amazing. They're brilliant for good reason. The first place that so many London companies look to. But I think that's changing as well for lots of reasons. I think we've just had the first South by Southwest in London, and so many London creative media companies have been to Austin for South by Southwest. We had the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, speak at South by Southwest London, but actually he spoke on the stage in Austin a few years ago at South by Southwest. So I think you're seeing cities like Austin, cities like Denver, where you can often reach key decision makers quite quickly, and there's lots of support to help you access the ecosystem. I think that's really been fascinating to see from my perspective. Companies that might have previously just looked at New York or San Francisco really begin to understand, look, what's happening in Boston, in Miami, in Austin, in Salt Lake City, in Denver, and Boulder. And of course, Diana, you'll have to excuse me, but I'm hugely biased. I'm here in LA. So I see so much interest from London companies in LA as well. And of course, we have good weather. We're a big, diverse city. We have all the food, the culture, everything. But I do think that there's a real understanding about what the future of LA could look like. Obviously, it's the home of not just creative industries, but I think it's such a center for creative thinking and entrepreneurship. We have the Olympics and Paralympics coming up. LA will join London and Paris as the three-time hosts of the Olympics. You know, we have all this new infrastructure being built. It's the home of kind of mega events in LA for the next 10, 20 years. And we recently brought a group of sustainability focused technology companies from London to LA. And I think that was really a good time to do it. Over the past 6 months, we've had the fires here in LA. We are seeing how climate is impacting how the way we live and build and continue to grow in these cities. So we thought it was important to bring some of London's companies with sustainability technology solutions to LA. And we met with the port, which of course is a really important part of the infrastructure of Southern California in the US, because so much cargo from Asia comes to the US through the ports of Long Beach and LA. We met with the LA Department of Water and Power, LA Metro, the city of Los Angeles, the city of Santa Monica, have the greenest municipal building in the US. We met with lots of the big firms driving growth in sustainability, resilience, firms like Jacobs, Parsons, Burrow Happold, which is actually a London-founded firm, but operating globally. So we brought these London-based technology startups to talk about how they can help public and private sector groups really build towards a more resilient future, and how do we build our cities to continue to be such hubs for creativity, for innovation, but also to ensure our communities are safe and continue to live in these wonderful cities. I would just add that one of my favorite parts of that trade mission was seeing Dodger Stadium and getting tour of the LA Dodgers, and just seeing how that stadium has changed and grown and how it engages with the community here in LA as well.
I think sports has always been obviously a very large category and is only growing right now in importance, obviously, with what's coming up, but also there's so much innovation happening in sports, women's sports as well. One of our investees, actually, LA Golf, which carries the brand of LA deliberately. I think it's a fantastic brand that Reed has built, and they're very proud of being in LA and expanding from LA now all over overseas, obviously at UK too. James, we have a section as part of our episodes. We call it a shout out. So essentially, it's an opportunity where our guests can think about somebody in your network, an investor, or an operator, or a partner who's making a real difference in helping, brands, or even helping you, for example, scale brands globally. Is there perhaps somebody that you could think of, and we're curious why?
I think it's a bit like asking, is there one moment that kind of shaped my career? It's a tricky one. You're asking me for one person. I think that's very difficult, Dan, but I appreciate the question. Thank you. I might cheat a little bit because I think there are so many people, but the folks that I would point to, I think, are those that are real community builders and putting community at the forefront of how we can build and grow together. So I think what you're doing here is brilliant. You're bringing community together. You're sharing insights, information, expertise, leadership. The guests you've had are truly inspiring. And I think there are lots of those people in the cities in which we live and operate. Todd at AI LA here, Dave Whelan, who's done so much for the life sciences community here. Rob Ryan does a huge amount in talking about community. Rebecca Saletta is with Honda, but doing a huge amount of work bringing together women investors in climate investing. Sophie from JP Morgan, Melissa at HSBC. There are so many groups, but what I would say these people have in common is that they're building community and I think doing it in an inclusive way. And I think that's really important. I think I'd much rather be invited to an inclusive event rather than an exclusive event. We all get invited to exclusive events. They, oh, how special. But actually, I think the people that I've mentioned are all bringing together people and want to include the community. And I think that is really inspiring because if we're building and growing and developing new technologies and showcasing them through the media, how are we making sure that these are impacting everyone in our communities? And I think that's really important.
That's very nicely put. I completely agree. And I also agree that I would love to attend more inclusive events, which luckily they do happen. I think in places like New York, LA, London, where there's such diversity, it's hard actually not to find inclusive events. I think we are quite blessed actually to be in these locations. James, I have a quick fire round of questions, and we're always trying to keep them short. It never works because we get really excited and we start talking about some of the answers that our guests are providing. But essentially, how they would work is to ask a question, fire a question at you, and then in 30 seconds, we try to address that. Are you ready? Shall we give this a try?
Let's kick it off.
With so much happening right now, and I know I'm asking a hard question to boil down to probably a couple of words, but what would be your top advice for founders thinking about international growth these days?
Do it. Do it. I think those are two words. I think companies are going to be global from day one. You have exposure to the whole world. So talk about inclusive. You've got access to the whole world. So I think do it. Think about it from day one.
Now, a bit of a pessimistic question here. What's a red flag that you normally see in brands that are trying to enter a market, especially like London or LA, too quickly?
Do it. I don't think that changes. Be patient with it as well, because it's going to take time. The cultural nuances, there are loads of people here to help. You've obviously got experience taking brands around the world, understanding the cultural nuances of operating, building, gaining, winning consumers and clients in different markets, different countries, different cities. We speak the same languages, but there are differences. The way we see the city. So I think do it, but perhaps be a little patient and learn from mistakes and take advantage of groups like us, groups like yours. The British consulate has offices around the world and other countries have different embassies and consulates helping them. People want to share their insight and their experiences. So why not learn from others? So I think do it, but be patient.
I actually have a follow-up question on that because, and I should have asked you probably earlier, but we all think of ourselves as global citizens, right? Traveling and moving around. But how important do you think is to actually have people on the ground? How much that helps with visibility? What do you normally advise founders that are at that stage of expanding?
It's difficult, right? Because from day one, I might be saying do it and think globally, but you can't always put someone the other side of the world when, you're still raising funding or looking at how you grow your own team, whether that's in one place or remotely. But I think it is important to have people on the ground. I think we see lots of London companies find success when they come and visit. I think you've got to take advantage. You've got to build relationships. Just make sure you are taking advantage of all the opportunities and friends you have around the world. But don't forget to follow up. Don't forget to return and visit and keep them up to date on how you're continuing to innovate. How important is the media to continue to get messaging out there when you can't be in a place all the time, have a permanent feet on the ground, as it were? You can still be part of the conversation in an industry, in a city. There are ways in which you can grow. I think brilliant if you can have people in place, but I also think that I recognize that's longer term and it might take some time to get to that place. And that's okay. There are other ways in which you can build recognition, work with people like you who can really help build brands globally.
I completely agree. I think it's about maintaining that top of mind, especially the companies that you mentioned, selling into enterprise, selling into big, large corporates. You got to maintain that visibility. Actually, it was no different for us. We start building out the fund from the UK, a US fund. Some things, obviously, you got to be in the market for, but I think the start can always be from your home country, in this case, either London or LA. A final question for you, James, and I think this is always a bit of a tricky one. What would be the most counterintuitive insight you've learned about scaling companies across borders?
I think maybe I'll refer to the previous two things I said. Do it, but be patient. Think about how you can grow. Look at me. I did a master's degree in London studies, and here I am in LA, which feels slightly counterintuitive. But there are ways in which I've been able to utilize it for my own advantage. But I think there are ways in which the lessons you learn from anywhere in the world can resonate or be relevant to your current environment. We can all learn from other people. We can all bring lessons we've learned from other industries, other lives, other careers into how you operate or think about how to bring people together today.
We are a byproduct of a multitude of experiences coming over time. And I think education, because you referenced that, I think it's probably one of those sectors that is already being disrupted. What you study, how you study, access to information. I studied marketing, which arguably that's a subject that every 4 years becomes redundant, whatever you study in school. We're also living in a time that it's never basically been a better time if you want to learn something, if you want to develop, if you want to grow. This has been a fantastic conversation, James, and I'm curious if people want to learn more about London and Partners or connect with your team, where should they go, how they should get in touch with you?
Thank you, Dana. I love the work the Media for Growth are doing. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I can obviously be contacted at my email address is jcummings@londonandpartners.com, or LinkedIn. You can go to grow.london, which is our website. And there's also londonandpartners.com. And then you can see us across different social channels. We're very keen to hear from London companies exploring global growth. But also what we haven't touched on so much is the US companies we're helping. So the more we can help entrepreneurs, leaders, investors, everyone do that, the better.
And I think that's also the reason organizations like ours and others that have a strategic role in the ecosystem should stick together. And we're looking at a lot of companies. Some of our investees are actually expanding to the UK. And although not all of them or only a part of them may be relevant for an investment, they still need support expanding internationally. So I think we're in a fantastic place to be able to collaborate and help companies expand overseas. James, it's been a pleasure having you on the call. I look forward to the delegation in LA and look forward to working together over the next few months and hopefully years and support more companies as we scale.
Likewise, thank you so much, Diana. I know Media for Growth and you especially have done lots of work with London and Partners on the East Coast, now the West Coast in London. So I think the more we can work in partnership and collaboration to build, the better. So thank you for today.
Thank you for being on the show and thank you for joining us on the Media Capital podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, leave a review, follow the pod, and subscribe at mediaforgrowth.com.